Have you been voting? Do you plan on voting? If so, how do you do that? I mean, not how do you register, how do you decide who you're going to vote for? Do you go into the booth and flip a coin? Do you really do research and figure out exactly what each one of the candidates is going to do, or at least what they say they're going to do? And then look at their history and figure out this is what they used to do, and this is probably what they'll do in the future. You know, what they're saying they're going to do now is not what they've done in the past. That's a lot of work. Or do you make the mistake of relying on the media? Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to go on this big long thing about how it's the media, it's the media. I'm not even going to get into that, because honestly it's irrelevant. It's you. It's all of us. We get distracted. It might be by the media. It might be by our own idealism. We get distracted. I'm going to break things down. We'll call this part 1. I'm going to try to keep these 10 to 12 minutes. I'm going to have a little fun while I'm at it, you know, just a little bit of fun. Okay, big problem. Congress, that would be the House of Representatives and the Senate. Really good idea about it, you know, because we have the executive branch, which is basically the president, the vice president, okay? And over here you have the judicial branch, which of course is the Supreme Court and all of the lower courts underneath it. The legislative branch, they're the ones that make the bills. They're the ones that spend the money. They're the ones that figure out how to not spend the money. They're the ones that decide whether or not to go to war. They're the ones that decide whether or not you should still have the right to bear arms, or all of those things. Let's break them down, okay, because the Congress is in 2 different parts. The House of Representatives, 435 elected people. They could be men or women, doesn't matter. These are elected by the people, and the way that it works is it's supposed to be a form of direct representation, because the state with the largest population has the largest number of representatives. But there's a problem with that. If you had a couple of states that have all the power because they've got all of the people, so they've got more of the representatives, they could rule all. Well, they wanted to figure out a way to combat that. So they made the Senate. In the House of Representatives, you know, California has many more representatives than, let's say, Delaware. New York has many more than Montana, strictly because it's about direct representation of population. Okay, so what did they do? They figured out, well, what we'll do is we'll make the Senate. And in the Senate, it doesn't matter how big your state is in any way, shape, or form. You get 2 senators. So now you have 435 elected congresspersons in the House of Representatives, the House of Representatives, and you have 100 senators elected to the Senate. So even if a couple of the big states get together and they ramrod some horrible legislation through that only helps those 2 or 3 big states, because all they have to do is get half. There's 435 seats. If they can get 218 votes, which is more than the 217 that would be remaining, they win. That bill then is sent over to the Senate. That's where you can have your stopgap. Because let's say that it was a bill that a couple of big states rammed down the other state's throat. In the Senate, those other states are going to go, no way. It doesn't work like that over here, buddy. It's got to be fair. It's got to be right. Really good way to do it. Makes a lot of sense. In the House of Representatives, majority rules. In the Senate, majority rules. That's the way it's always been. But then, somebody got a little bit worried that in the Senate, the majority, whoever had the most out of the 100, they would just push bills through. They would just, you know what, this is what we're going to do, we're going to vote on it. Which left the minority feeling very much like a minority, very misrepresented, or actually unrepresented, and they wanted to be able to debate the bills, to have a chance to amend them. And the majority would just say, nope, we've got the majority. That's when this thing called the filibuster came into effect. And its purpose was to guarantee debate. So what they said was, yes, to pass a bill you only need a majority, which would be 51 votes. You could even go 50-50 and have the vice president break the tie. The vice president technically serves as the president of the Senate. So if there is a 50-50 tie, that goes to him. You can ask Dick Cheney about that. He had to break the tie to make the original Bush tax cuts actually go into effect. Little keynote there. Anyway, so they say you can still pass a bill with 50 votes, but when you present a bill, if the minority feels that they don't like it and they want to debate it, then you have to give something called cloture. A cloture vote. Sounds a lot like closure, right? Same thing. It's basically an agreement that there has been a fair chance to amend and to debate. Once that's done, you have to get at least 60 people to agree to that closure, or cloture as it's actually called. Here's the problem. There were no limits put on it. It was left to unlimited debate. Some of my older viewers might have, or even some of the younger ones just might have heard about it. Jimmy Stewart was in a movie called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and there's a very famous scene where he actually does a filibuster, literally. He stands up and talks until he finally ends up passing out. He's trying to stop a bill from going through. But there's that key word in there, stop. The filibuster was never meant to stop a bill. It was only meant to guarantee debate. So even after that debate, the majority should win. That's the way that our country was built. It's the idealism that our country's built on. But the filibuster has been perverted. It needs to be brought back to what it used to be. Well, I'm sorry, it still is what it used to be. It's just it's been perverted because there were no limits put on it. The filibuster needs to be reclassified, and here's how you fix it. If the minority feels that there hasn't been enough debate, the minute that the majority says, okay, here's our bill, we want to vote on it, the minority can invoke that cloture vote. And let's say that the majority cannot achieve those 60 votes. Then that will trigger an automatic 20 hours on the Senate floor. The majority will get 10 hours, the minority will get 10 hours. The minority will lead off since they're the ones objecting to having the vote. They want to debate more and have a chance to amend. So now there's a time limit. There will be at least 10 hours on each side, so a total of 20 hours of debate about this bill. No matter what it is, whether it's Obamacare, whether it's the debt ceiling, or whether it's announcing, National Peanuts Day. It doesn't really matter. If they don't want to let the vote happen, they want to amend it or debate it more, they can invoke that. Now, when that 20 hours is up, and more specifically, when the minority runs out of their 10 hours, that's it. Cloture is then automatic, and it's time to vote on the bill. Let me tell you why this is important. This is important because you'll never know whether or not, as a lot of people like to call it, the Obama socialism ideas and his policies might have actually worked really well. You'll never know if George W. Bush's idea of partially privatizing Social Security might have worked. We don't know. These are things that were all done by the filibuster. I'm not trying to make an exact number, I'm just throwing out my perception of it. In my perception, 80% of the bills, of the ideas that Barack Obama campaigned on in his original 2008 presidential campaign didn't happen. And not because he flip-flopped, but because they were filibustered. And the other 20% that actually made it through were grossly declawed, neutered, under the threat of a filibuster. You know, that's the problem. We're never going to find out who really has the right answers because the other side, in the minority, after we've kicked them out of the House, we've kicked them out of the Senate, still has a chance to stop everything. Wouldn't it be nice if we could actually just find out who has the best ideas? It's in both of their self-interests to make sure that we don't. That would be the first thing that we could do to fix our government. The first of many. Have some fun, people. Think about it.
I'm surprised you haven't heard about me. You know, I got a bad reputation, and sometimes I just go nuts like now.